Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to trace the incredible journey of a single idea, all the way from a simple thought to becoming an actual law that affects everyone in Malaysia. So, let's get started. It kind of feels like it happens out of nowhere, right? One day you're talking about a problem, and the next there's this huge national plan to fix it. Well, it's definitely not magic. It's a very real, very structured, and sometimes pretty dramatic process called public policy.
All right, so to really get how this journey works, we have to start at square one. What exactly is public policy? It's way more than just a rule or a law. It's the blueprint for how a country actually moves forward.
Now, the most important part of this whole definition, for me, is that phrase, selected from alternatives. See, policy isn't just about what a government does, it's about what it chooses to do. It's a conscious choice to take the country in one direction over another, all based on a specific set of goals.
And this really drives that point home. A choice can be to act or not to act. An action policy is what we all think of, building that new highway. But an inaction policy, that's just as powerful. It's when the government looks at a situation and makes a deliberate, conscious decision not to do anything. And believe it or not, that choice is a policy. Okay, so if policy is a choice, who gets to make it? An idea can't just wander into Parliament all by itself, right? Nope. It gets pushed and pulled and molded by a whole cast of characters and different forces. Let's take a look at who they are.
Academics have all these different theories to explain how policies get made. Take the group model, for example. It suggests that policy is basically the outcome of a big power struggle between different interest groups. But then you have the elite model, which argues that really, policy just reflects what a small, powerful group of people want. And that tension between what the public is asking for and what the elite decides is right at the heart of understanding who a government is really working for.
So in Malaysia, this really boils down to three main players. First, you've got the officials, the people who actually write and carry out the policy. But they're not in a bubble. You've also got the public, people like you and me, who bring up issues. And then there are the interest groups. Now, these guys can't write the laws themselves, but through lobbying and campaigning, they're often the ones who triggered the whole government machine into taking action.
So, we've got our idea and we've got our players. Now, that idea has to set off on what you could call a road of trials. It's a whole process that every single potential policy has to survive if it ever wants to see the light of day.
Honestly, pretty much every policy, whether it's for a small town or the whole country, follows this same basic life cycle. First, someone has to identify a problem. Then comes the planning, where different solutions get debated. Step 3, legitimize, that's the big one. That's getting the official stamp of approval. After that, it gets put into action. And finally, you have to evaluate it to see if it even worked. It's this constant loop of doing, checking, and refining.
Now, let's look at this process on a totally massive scale. Malaysia is pretty famous for its huge long-term national plans. These aren't just policies. They're more like grand quests designed to shape the entire nation for decades to come. Just look at this timeline. These Outline Perspective Plans, or OPPs, are these giant multi-decade blueprints for the whole country. The very first one launched the famous New Economic Policy and ran for 20 years. The ones that followed brought in the New Development Policy and the Vision Development Policy. We're not just talking about ideas here. These are massive, detailed roadmaps for the entire nation's future.
But that brings up a really big question, doesn't it? How does something so huge, so ambitious, actually get approved? How does a vision like that make the final jump from being a document on a desk to becoming the actual law of the land?
And this, my friends, is where we get to the final showdown. This is the part of the journey where our policy idea, now written up as a formal bill, has to face its biggest tests inside the halls of power. Before a bill even gets a peek at the cabinet, there is a mountain of work to do. A ministry drafts the proposal, sure, but then it has to do the rounds. It's sent to the Ministry of Finance, the Attorney General's office, you name it. And this isn't just to get some friendly feedback. This is a survival test. If an idea can't get other ministries on board at this stage, it's probably dead on arrival. And then, every Wednesday, it comes face to face with the most important gatekeeper of them all, the cabinet. This is the moment of truth. This is where the highest level of government decides if an idea has what it takes to even move forward.
Okay, so if it gets the cabinet's green light, the final, very public leg of the journey begins. The bill goes to Parliament, where it's debated and voted on in both houses. If it passes that, it's presented to His Majesty the King for the royal assent. And once that's given,
the bill is officially published in the Government Gazette. At that exact moment, our little idea isn't an idea anymore. It is law.
So after all of that, the debates, the drafting, the committees, the approvals, you have to ask why? Why put an idea through such a tough, detailed, and, let's be honest, long process?
This quote really hits the nail on the head. The process is laborious on purpose. It's designed that way. It's a whole system of checks and balances that's meant to make sure any new law isn't just a quick fix for a temporary problem, but that it actually lines up with the long-term vision for the entire country.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've just seen the incredible, complicated journey an idea takes to become law. But does a really complex process automatically guarantee a good policy in the end? Well, that's probably a question for another time. Thanks so much for joining me.